this retrospective. I would like to first note that we have 7 pages of content, so a lot of good feedback, a lot of good interaction, and a lot of good notes. As we've changed our process, I've put in notes to where we want to verbalize associated with this. And I want to start off with follow-up items from the previous retro. So John Duplessis, if you are available, could you please verbalize the first one?
Thank you, Christopher. Yeah, so as part of the initiative to improve code review efficiency, which we've been updating on the last few retrospectives, I'm happy to announce that we ran a domain experts pilot during 12.9 with 2 backend groups. The overall feedback was very positive. There's a link in the document where you can see the key takeouts from it. And we've also, based on that feedback, as well as various other conversations, we have introduced a new MR that proposes introducing domain experts into our code review process, which is currently open. We are aiming to keep it open until the 14th of April, with a goal of introducing it formally into our process from milestone 13.0 onwards. I'll also quickly mention that Darva has started by creating a code review training guide for reviewers. And the link is in there. And if you have any feedback on that, please contribute. And then also Nick has made progress on the measure and report and review times, actually being able to chart the review relate usage in terms of how many engineering team members are using the recommendations from the review relate. So we are able to chart that now and make informed decisions based on that. And that's all from me.
Thanks, John. Just a note, we definitely are focusing on reviewer efficiency and also review efficiency. It's something I'll cover tomorrow in our group conversation. So this is a super important initiative, and I appreciate everybody's participation, including developing training, as well as figuring out the right ways we go about this. So really appreciate everybody's efforts. Next up, John Hampton, you wanted to talk about some improvement in UX and front-end, back-end coordination?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Christopher. So our 12.8 retro contained a recurring "what can we improve going forward" theme that was focused around front end and UX MR reviews. We identified some key pain points, and we're currently discussing those in the linked issue. So please take a look there and feel free to add any comments or thoughts. Our second point is around creating a concept of a UX definition of done that we can aim to start using in the 13.0 milestone. And we identified some key success metrics, and we're discussing what our pilot program will look for that in 13.0, and we're also, the issue for that is linked. Please feel free to add any comments or take a look there. Thanks, Christopher.
Thanks, John. Just a note for other engineering managers, this is something we'll be monitoring and taking track of, because we may want to do something consistently across the board. Our definitions of done are super important to our effectiveness, and I want to make sure that that's included as part of our process. Next, we'll move to the section where what went well this month. And holy cow, there's a lot that went well this month. In spite of our situation globally, we've seen a lot of good progress in a lot of areas. I unfortunately could only highlight a few areas, but I want to make sure that we at least cover some. Daniel Croft, are you available to verbalize the one in package?
I am indeed. Hi, everybody. David Fernandez called out that there are several "oh wow" moments when releasing NPM package forwarding feature. The example was pulling sub packages from a group with NPM or yarn from a project empty of any NPM package will work. Even better, as an example, is at Babel/core will pull other subcomponents. The GitLab NPM registry will forward those requests properly, and NPM yarn will pull them without complaining. So this is a pretty surprising discovery as we're implementing this forwarding feature that we've delivered. Over to you.
Cool. Kyle, you're next up under process. This is 2E.
Yeah, thank you. We've heard a lot of feedback this last release that our pipeline for the GitLab project is getting a little bit more seamless, so more reliable and a little bit faster. We linked to a few of the items that we worked on this past release. So implementing merge results pipeline, which helps ensure less frequent broken master. and review apps now only default when there's a UI change. So trying to focus how we're spending our cloud resources a little bit more so that we can be more efficient and targeted in where we're deploying review apps within the pipeline. Back to you, Christopher.
Thanks. And next we'll move to the collaboration section. Christy Leneville, are you available to talk about UX/PM collaboration?
I sure am. Kyle, that's great news about the review apps. Thank you for bringing that up. And so John Hampton already talked about collaboration between engineering and UX, but I wanted to bring up also collaboration between UX and our product managers. Lots of great comments about how UX and PMs are working even more closely together. One person said being paired with their PM has been helpful in focusing their work. And then the release management team in particular. So going back to John's comments, talked about how it's really helping them to hit their groove, working well together. So these are really good things. So I'll turn it over to Craig Gomez.
Thanks, Christine. Actually, quick correction, last name is pronounced Gomes, but thanks for handing over. Common mistake, happens 99% of the time. So yeah, so we recently had the opportunity to work with Nate Berkopec on a Ruby on Rails performance workshop within GitLab. And how this all started was through Twitter. So Nate runs speedshop.co, which is a great site on Ruby on Rails performance. He is also a maintainer of Puma and saw in Twitter that GitLab was slowly rolling out to Puma. And once we got it rolled out, he said, hey, in a tweet, maybe I should work with GitLab and work on some of their other performance bottlenecks that they have. The tweet was forwarded to me and I followed up with him, said, hey, we're hiring. He said, no, thanks, I'm not looking for a job right now, but I'm happy to work with your team and figure out some kind of training that would be helpful for you. And through a series of conversations, he actually tailored a training session for us. It was over 4 weeks, 2 sessions a day, depending on time zone. And it was custom tailored to GitLab and it was fantastic. We had a lot of really good feedback. We still have there's a link to the internal training that was there. The folks that attended it, either synchronously or asynchronously, found it really valuable. We did a survey afterwards about feedback from all the attendees, and Nate even joined our internal Slack and is still doing office hours with us and worked on some MRs that we were actively working on with GitLab.com. So it's been a fantastic interactive session. And for anybody that's not working at GitLab right now that is looking for any kind of Rails training, Nate was fantastic, and he has other offerings that are available on his site. So highly recommend him. It's proven to be very beneficial for us. So back to Christopher.
Thanks, Craig. Just want to highlight during Culture Amp, trainings and success are 2 key aspects that our engineers are looking for help on. So if we have other ideas for additional trainings that we need to do, we're also starting things like the iteration training, reviewer training, really looking for suggestions on how to make sure that we have a really good developer experience here at GitLab. So really appreciate you taking this initiative, Craig, and also look forward to other folks giving us options in the future. Neil, you're the next item under the secure, and this is J under 3.
Yep. Great, thank you. So in our secure group, our 12.8 retro was a bit light with only a couple of topics. We attributed that to not enough reminders, not enough promotion. And so in 12.9, what we did is just weekly, as well as within our meetings, we were raising this topic more often. Please contribute. And so we ended up getting 15 topics. There was so much to discuss. We actually had to prioritize several of those topics. And then the group had continued conversation around how do we keep the sync sessions, which we all deemed really valuable, but given time zones, valuing inclusion, what are our next steps forward? So that's what we're going to be doing in 13.0.
Cool, that's really important. Inclusion is super important to us, and making sure everybody feels involved, particularly geographical inclusion, diversity inclusion, all those aspects. Are really happy to hear that you're thinking about those things, Neil. Kyle, it's back to you down in testing and internal tooling under 5C.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things in here, so I encourage everyone who's looking at the doc to read through it across the quality department. The one item I wanted to highlight is there were 2 new end-to-end tests added as a result of a root cause analysis incident involving customer installed pipelines. So this will help prevent these type of issues in the future from impacting our customers and we catching them earlier in the feedback loop. I'll hand it off over to Dan, who I believe is next under what went wrong, 1C.
Thanks for that, Kyle. Yeah, so there's a common theme coming up in our weekly retrospectives as well as the monthly retrospective at 12/9. Contribute being cancelled as well as the worldwide situation. COVID-19 has resulted in reduced morale and productivity. Nico Mezapera called this out in our retrospective, and there was a lot of support for this. I think it's a really important point to recognize with our teams that while our day-to-day might not have changed, this is something that will impact people's happiness, focus, supporting their families will take time. So I think this is really important to call out. And I believe the next person there is Chris Bowers from Fulfillment with 2E in process.
Actually, Ricky is before that at 2C, I believe.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you.
Thanks. We had the largest numbers of delivered issues this milestone, but we also had the largest number of missed deliverables this milestone. Some of the things that we're planning on doing is to trim back the amount of work that we're planning for each milestone, as well as we're starting to weight issues more deliberately to make sure that before we take on any work that it's weighted. And we're also, thanks to the iteration planning or iteration training issues that Christopher made, iteration and making the minimum viable changes become much more to the forefront in our grooming sessions. And we're trying to make sure that the issues that we're creating are as small as possible as well. We think that will help address the missed issues per milestone. Thank you. Chris Baus now, I think, has 2E.
Yes, in fulfillment, we did have a significant back and forth on one of our features during the review process. There are areas where the developer lacked knowledge of it, but there's also some different opinions in the reviewers during the process, and it caused the feature to slip the milestone. We have some ideas in the retro how to fix this going forward, but probably the root cause is just too large of an issue. I need to break the issues down further before moving forward with the large new issues. And back to Christopher.
Thanks, Chris. Just a note also, we're talking about if we see a lot of back and forth, potentially pushing to synchronous. So I don't know if we have an exact rule of thumb, but it's something to also think about. I've seen a number of groups that have used that technique to just say, hey, if it gets above 10s back and forths or 5 back and forths or whatever the number may be, just think in those terms. So additional thing to consider there. Cool. I think Lindsay is up under training.
So it was discussed during the Defend retrospective that we had learned the lessons over 12/9 around how feature flags work at GitLab. We've got a very new team, so unfortunately this was a learning by doing, but just understanding what feature flags are there, which are powered by Unleashed and which are powered by Flipper, and just the difference between those two. So, you know, as a team, we're taking time to stop and ensure that we have a thorough understanding of not just feature flags, but, you know, these types of development tools that the team can leverage if they know well, or really slip up if we don't.
Thanks, Lindsay. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but definitely think this is a good area where we need to add some training as well. So really glad that you brought this up, and we'll be proactive in trying to create some additional guidance to help with that for new team members. Donald, are you on the call to verbalize the next one under how we can improve and 1F?
I am. Thanks, Christopher. So we've been hearing from our product counterparts that they don't have the visibility they need on issue progress once it goes in dev. In order to provide that visibility, we're trying to update issues weekly with the progress that has been made. We've also started, or we're also going to start using the health status update feature, which is just added in 12.9. I linked the issue describing the feature in the doc, but it essentially allows us to easily flag issues that are at risk of going off track. Back to Christopher.
Thanks, Donald, for sharing. Just FYI for everybody, I have already looked at this feature and think it is awesome. Like, this is a great way to kind of give people who aren't necessarily directly involved the day-to-day on an issue kind of an overall kind of view of a status associated with it. I've already made an iteration request to add this to dashboards, essentially, or not dashboards, but boards, so that we can kind of have an idea, because a lot of us work through those for our initiatives. Really happy to see the team take us on, and I encourage all EMs to look at this as a potential feature to use of GitLab. Cool. Clement, are you available to verbalize on iteration?
Yes. So one of the interesting challenges we face in the APM team is teams are getting really empowered to break things down to smaller iterations, which is great. But sometimes the PMs are not aware of what scope is being cut and decisions are being made, which creates an interesting situation where PMs feel like maybe we're dropping the bar in quality, but really we're trying to iterate faster. So we've kind of created a new process around this to ask engineers to let PMs be the DRI for the final decisions for cutting scope. They will probably be more than willing to cut scope, but making sure that they're aware of it is a big part of figuring out how to schedule the follow-ups. And we're also experimenting with a better process for improving our backlog refinement to make sure we're reducing the cutting of scope during active development and trying to do that beforehand. Back to you.
Thanks for holding self-accountability, Clement. Clement's one of our champions of iteration, so we really want to thank him for all hard effort there associated with Sarah. Really want to make sure to emphasize here, transparency is super key and communication is super key. We really want to make sure that product management is in the loop on any changes and content associated with it. It's okay to collaborate and have a discussion around it. But we need to make sure that those are happening, because we don't want them surprised, particularly if we're thinking about scope considerations around this. And as part of our iteration process, post-process, always look back and do an iteration retro on how we could have potentially caught this up earlier. So I really appreciate the transparency, Clement, and the further refinement in communication and other aspects. Great work. Cool. We'll move to Darva if she is available under item 4 for collaboration.
Yes, thanks, Christopher. I'd like to say that we've seen some success working with QA, with quad planning, and also with security. And we're hoping to start to measure that success to see how effective our collaboration has been. I myself have already seen a few issues in 12.9 and 12.10 that without their help we would have missed. So I'm really excited about how well it's going.
Cool. And a special note, Kyle in engineering productivity probably is highly interested in how you might measure this to figure this out, because this is something that we may want to consider across the organization. So please share your findings with Kyle in that process.
All right.
Cool. Number 5 under planning, Nick, you're up.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, the Geo team can better align the work that ends up getting done in a milestone with the planned deliverables at the outset. The team does a weekly scheduling call where we go through our issue board of active Geo issues, and there's concern that the team's effort is not showing correctly through this board, and that having a board of merge requests could help with this visibility issue. I linked to an issue that's been open for a while, proposing a board for MRs, and there's some renewed activity on it. So definitely encourage anyone who's interested in providing feedback on that issue to take a look.
Cool. And Jerome, you're up next.
Yeah, so during 12.9, there were times where engineering was waiting or blocked by design. One of the things which we want to do is ensure that product and design is always working one milestone ahead, and that we've got a backlog built which we can simply pick off of. To fix this, Christopher actually pointed me to Sam Goldstein's team and the planning process which they use, where they're pretty explicit about the timing and feedback process for designs. So we're going to look at implementing something like that in our teams.
Yeah, and just to highlight here, we really want to try to keep as close as we can to the official process, but teams are flexible to consider options associated with it. And the clear aspect that we want to make sure is that you're documenting them and you're treating them as experiments. If we think overall we need to move to it, or a particular team has a way, it's super critical that we document it. And then we also treat it as, let's try to figure out if this actually improves it, or if this is a team specific kind of situation associated with it. We want to try to offer as much flexibility, but we do need some level of consistency. So please keep that in mind as you're considering this. Sam's is a great example where he's asking for a little bit more time up front for effectively iteration associated with the efforts. And I think this is a good thing for us to consider as kind of we move into this process. Cool. And then go ahead.
5-minute time check.
Thank you very much. We are moving along to training for Michelle. Michelle, you're available to talk about training.
I think CZ was before me, but I'll just go really quick. There's been a lot of comments about how confusing feature flags are, and even in this retro and the last retro, over and over, all sorts of different issues. So I've created a training issue here. Please participate in this issue because my team has not experienced the same issues as other teams, and I really need collaboration there. Lindsay, I think some of your lessons learned would be really valuable to provide training on these different areas.
Thanks for reminding me, Michelle. Thanks for also taking the initiative to set up that training. CZ, bring us home.
Sure. Thanks, Christopher. We are working on the rolling out of the Elasticsearch-based advanced search on GitLab.com. Among many things, we identified a few areas that we want to focus, including optimizing our pipeline, cutting down the storage size, and coming up with a ready handbook. So we are going to keep iterating on these small things, and we hope bring the feature to more customers on GitLab.com. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, CZ. Just the last section to kind of cover improvements for the next release, the track. I've selected a few. If folks have other ones that they want to track either for themselves or for individuals, please feel free to add, and then we'll review at the next retro. The ones I highlighted is the feature flag training, because I think that's a good one for us to understand overall as an organization. A couple items that kind of made it through the cracks since the last retro. One of them is mine, so I'll take responsibility for that one. Darva's on the quad planning, since that's new to us. I'd love to hear feedback on how that's going or not going well, and also not going well from that perspective, so we can continue to iterate on improving that process. And then CZ, I think this is important from an Elasticsearch perspective. Basically, how do we enable a feature across .com, but in a systematic and sane fashion is the way I'll kind of describe it, so that we minimize the impact and basically give customers proper isolation so they aren't impacted by problems or challenges that we may have in the process of rolling out a new feature or piece of functionality. Cool. That hits all the items in the retrospective. Are there any items that folks would like to highlight in the 1 minute and 30 seconds left before time? All right. Well, as always, thanks for a great retrospective. I appreciate the collaboration by all the team members and great work together. And I really appreciate all the efforts of all the team members involved. Thank you very much. And everybody have a great GitLab day.